The kitchen smelled like sugar, butter, and something too sweet to be from a box. Emily had been up since dawn baking that cake, a lopsided 2-layer chocolate one, with blue frosting spread unevenly and tiny toy cars circling the edge. It wasn't perfect, but it was made by hand, and for her that made it sacred. The morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, bouncing off the glass jars lined neatly on the counter. In the middle of the chaos, balloons half inflated, paper plates scattered and wrapping paper still taped in rolls, Liam stood on a wooden stool, elbows on the table, grinning at the flickering candles. He was turning 8 years old, that wild magical age when everything still feels endless. He was missing one front tooth, and his shirt was stained with frosting from where he'd licked the spoon earlier. His friends from school crowded around, wearing colourful party hats that drooped on their heads. The room buzzed with laughter and the rustle of tiny sneakers against the linoleum floor. Mark sat quietly at the head of the table. He looked thinner than he had a few months ago, his face pale beneath the soft light. A wool beanie covered his bald head, a gift from Emily after the chemo had taken the last of his hair. His eyes, though, still had the same warmth. When Liam turned toward him, Mark forced his tired body to sit a little straighter and smiled as if nothing in the world was wrong. "Ready, champ?" he asked, voice a little hoarse. Liam nodded eagerly, cheeks puffed with excitement. Emily dimmed the lights, and suddenly the room fell into that soft hush, the kind that only happens before a wish. 8 small flames danced on the cake, their glow reflecting in everyone's eyes. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Emily said gently. Liam clasped his hands together like he'd seen in cartoons and closed his eyes. He thought of his dad, of how tired he'd looked lately, of the nights he'd heard his mom crying quietly in the kitchen when she thought no one was awake. He didn't really understand what cancer meant, but he knew it was bad. He knew it made his dad's hands shake and his voice softer. So his wish wasn't for toys this year. It wasn't for video games or a trip to the amusement park. It was for something only his little heart could ask for with such pure sincerity. He wished, "Please God, make my dad better." He blew out the candles, a single long breath, and the flames vanished into smoke. The kids clapped, shouting, "Yay!" and "Happy birthday." Emily laughed and clapped along, though her eyes shimmered with tears. Mark joined in too, hiding the sudden sting behind a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Photos were taken, dozens of them. Liam with frosting on his chin, Emily pretending to bite his ear, and Mark pale but radiant holding his son close. One of those photos would later sit on their living room mantel. The one with Mark leaning forward slightly, smiling faintly while Liam beamed up at him, the candle smoke curling softly in the air. It looked ordinary, joyful even, but in hindsight, it would be the last birthday photo they ever took together. As the party wound down, Mark excused himself to the porch. The autumn air was crisp, golden leaves swirling across the grass. He sank slowly into the porch swing, each creak echoing in the quiet afternoon. His chest hurt, not sharply but deeply, like a slow unraveling. Emily came out a few minutes later, a mug of tea in her hand. "You should lie down," she said softly. Mark smiled weakly. "I don't want to waste today sleeping." "Not this one." She sat beside him. They didn't talk much. The sound of Liam's laughter drifted through the window, high and free. For a moment, it almost felt like nothing was wrong, like this could be just another birthday. But Emily's fingers were trembling as she held his hand. She could feel how cold his skin was. She knew what the doctors had said. She'd stopped asking for timelines. She just counted days now, pretending each one might stretch a little longer. That night, after everyone had left and Liam was tucked into bed, Mark lingered in his son's room. The glow-in-the-dark stars Emily had stuck on the ceiling years ago still shone faintly. He brushed the boy's hair back and whispered, "You're my best thing, buddy. Don't you ever forget that." Liam stirred but didn't wake. Mark sat there for a long time, memorizing the sound of his breathing, the tiny twitch of his fingers as he dreamed. Then he whispered something only the night heard. "The wish you made tonight, kiddo." I made the same one. Hours later, when the world was quiet and the candles had melted into small pools of wax on the counter, Mark's breathing grew shallow. Emily woke at dawn and found him still sitting in the chair beside Liam's bed, one hand resting gently on his son's blanket. His eyes were closed, and he looked peaceful, almost smiling. The sun rose over the quiet house, painting everything in gold. Downstairs, the half-eaten cake still sat on the table, balloons deflating slowly. A single candle had fallen onto the frosting, its wick dark and still. And in the framed photograph on the counter, the one taken just hours before, Mark's smile seemed almost alive, frozen in that fleeting moment before the photo was taken, before time caught up, before everything changed. The next morning, the house felt different. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in that quiet emptiness that lingers after laughter leaves a room. The sunlight still crept through the curtains, dust still floated lazily in the air, and somewhere down the street someone's dog barked. Yet everything inside the Harper home felt slower. Emily woke first. She didn't remember falling asleep. The clock read 6:42 a.m., the same time Mark usually stirred to make coffee. For a moment, half asleep, her mind reached for the familiar, the smell of freshly ground beans, the low hum of the coffee maker, his voice saying, "Morning." Smosa, but when she reached across the bed, the sheets were cold. Her heart thudded as she rose, blanket slipping from her shoulders. She called softly, "Mark?" No answer. Down the hallway, she noticed Liam's door was slightly open. She stepped in and froze. Mark sat slumped in the chair beside their son's bed, one hand still resting on the blanket, his head tilted as if he'd fallen asleep mid-sentence. But something in the stillness told her the truth before her mind could accept it. Her knees buckled. For a long moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't even scream. She just stood there, gripping the doorframe, staring. The early light touched his face, soft and pale. There was peace there, too much peace. When the sob finally broke free, it was raw and soundless. She rushed forward, pressing her face against his shoulder, whispering, "No, no, no," over and over until the words became air. Liam stirred in bed, rubbing his eyes. "Mom," he mumbled, voice small. "Why are you crying?" Emily turned quickly, wiping her face, but tears kept coming. She couldn't find the words. How could she? How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his wish didn't come true? "Daddy's tired, sweetheart," she said finally. Her voice cracked. He's gone to sleep for a long time." Liam blinked, confused. "Like Grandpa?" Emily nodded, unable to speak. He sat up, clutching his pillow, staring at his father's still form. After a long silence, he whispered, "But it was his birthday too." That was when Emily broke completely. She wrapped her arms around him, both of them crying. Two small bodies holding on to a love too big to lose. The funeral took place 3 days later, under a sky that couldn't decide whether to rain or shine. The church was filled beyond its small white walls. Neighbors, co-workers, friends, even people from the hospital who had known Mark during his treatment. They came with flowers, with casseroles, with awkward, heavy hugs that tried to fill the silence. Liam sat in the front row, his little suit jacket slightly oversized, his hands fidgeting with the tiny silver car his dad had given him last year. He didn't understand why everyone kept looking at him with sad eyes. He just wanted his dad to wake up, to come through the church doors smiling like he always did, saying, "Hey, champ, let's get out of here." But the wooden box at the front of the room didn't open. When Pastor Reynolds spoke, his words floated gently through the quiet air, about love, legacy, and the way some lives shine so bright, they leave light even after they fade. Emily barely heard any of it. She just stared at the coffin, at the folded navy blue cap sitting atop it, Mark's old firefighter cap. After the service, people filed past to offer condolences. "He was a good man," they said. "He loved you both so much. He's in a better place now." Words that were supposed to comfort but only deepened the ache. Liam clung to his mother's hand. Every time someone bent down to tell him how brave he was, he just nodded. He didn't feel brave. He felt empty. Outside, as they carried the casket toward the hearse, Liam tugged on Emily's sleeve. "Can I go with him?" Her voice broke. "He's going somewhere we can't follow right now, sweetheart, but he said he'd always be with me," Liam whispered. Emily crouched, cupping his face. "And he will, just not in the way you can see." He looked down at the ground, the fall leaves swirling around his shoes. "Then how will I know he's there?" She didn't have an answer, so she pulled him close, pressing her face into his hair, whispering, "You'll just know, baby. You'll feel it." That night, the house was silent again, the kind of silence that hums, heavy and endless. Emily sat at the kitchen table, the half-melted birthday candle still in a cup beside her. She'd tried to clean earlier but couldn't bring herself to throw anything away. Not the leftover cake, not the balloons still half floating, not even the used paper plates. On the table sat Mark's phone. She picked it up and unlocked it, scrolling through photos from the party. There he was, smiling, laughing, eyes bright even in sickness. In one picture, he was helping Liam blow out the candles, their faces side by side. She pressed her thumb against the screen, tracing his face. Tears blurred her vision, and then she noticed something. In the corner of the photo, barely visible behind the candle smoke, Mark's reflection in the kitchen window, his lips moving. He hadn't been posing for the photo. He'd been saying something. She zoomed in, heart pounding. His lips formed 3 words, "I love you." Her hand trembled. It wasn't a message meant for the camera, it was meant for her. For Liam. For the moment that would outlive him, Emily turned the phone off, holding it to her chest. The tears came again, but softer this time. Not from grief alone, but from the strange aching beauty of love that refused to end. Liam couldn't sleep that night. The stars on his ceiling glowed faintly, just as they had when his father tucked him in. He clutched the little silver car in his palm, the one his dad had promised would keep him safe. He whispered into the dark, "Good night, Daddy." Outside his window, a breeze stirred the wind chimes. They clinked softly, the same melody Mark used to hum when rocking him as a baby. Liam smiled faintly in the dark. "I know, Dad, I feel you." And for the first time since that morning, he slept without crying. Downstairs on the kitchen table, the framed photo of the birthday still stood, frozen in light and laughter. The boy, the candles, the father smiling behind him, no one could see it. But in the faint reflection of the glass, the soft outline of a man seemed to linger near the window, watching, peaceful, keeping a promise he intended never to break. Weeks passed. The crisp golden colors of autumn faded into the grey chill of November. The Harper house sat quiet at the end of Maplewood Lane, its porch light flickering every evening, like it was still waiting for someone to come home. Emily tried to hold the world together the way Mark used to. She made breakfast every morning, packed Liam's lunch, ironed his tiny shirts, smiled for him before school, and then cried when he was gone. Some mornings, she'd stand at the kitchen sink staring at the empty chair where Mark always sat with his coffee. Sometimes she swore she could still hear him, the soft rustle of his newspaper, the creak of the chair, that low hum of the tune he'd whistle without realizing. Liam, meanwhile, began to change in quiet ways. He still played with his toy cars, still watched his favorite cartoons, but he laughed less. He spent longer staring out windows. His teacher sent home notes. "Liam's been quiet lately. He seems distracted." One Friday, Emily found him in his room after school, sitting cross-legged on the floor. He had a shoebox open in front of him. Inside were tiny mementos, a fire department patch, a photo of Mark holding him as a baby, the candle stubs from his last birthday, and a folded note in crayon that read, "Get well soon, Dad." Emily knelt beside him. "Hey, buddy, what's all this?" Liam didn't look up. "I'm building a memory box, so Dad doesn't disappear." The words hit her like a storm. "Sweetheart, your dad's never going to disappear." He glanced up, then eyes wet and wide. "Then why can't I hear him anymore?" Emily reached for him, but her throat closed up. She wanted to tell him that grief didn't fade in straight lines, that sometimes love gets quiet before it speaks again. But she didn't know how to explain that to a child. Instead, she pulled him into her arms, holding him tight. "He's still with us, Liam. You just have to listen in different ways." That night, when Liam was asleep, she opened her laptop and began to write. She titled the document Letters to Mark. She didn't plan what to say, the words just came. "Hey, love. Today Liam asked why he can't hear you anymore. I didn't know what to tell him. I tried to be strong, but I miss you so much it physically hurts. The house feels like an echo of us. You'd be proud of him, though. He made straight A's. He's growing up faster than I can keep up. I just wish you were here to see it." When she finished, she whispered aloud, "Can you hear me, Mark?" The heater hummed softly in reply, and somewhere in the distance a car door slammed. But then, faintly, the wind brushed against the window, and for a brief second, she thought she heard his voice. Gentle and familiar, always. A week later, Liam came home from school with a note about the upcoming Family Heritage Day. Parents were invited to come share stories about their families. Liam shoved the paper onto the kitchen counter and said flatly, "I don't want to go." "Why not?" Emily asked, drying dishes. "Because everyone else gets to bring their dads." He looked down at his sneakers. "I don't have one anymore." Emily knelt, heart aching. "You'll always have one, baby." "He's just in a different place." Liam shook his head. "That doesn't count." That night, after Liam went to bed, she sat in the living room, surrounded by photos, wedding pictures, beach trips, Christmas mornings. Each one showed a life that now felt like a dream she'd woken up from too soon. Her eyes landed on the framed picture from the birthday, the one taken right before everything changed. She picked it up, running her fingers along the edge. Then she had an idea. The next day, she called the local print shop. "Can you make a life-size photo board from a picture?" she asked. By that weekend, a tall cardboard cutout of Mark stood in the living room, smiling, frozen in that last photograph. Liam's eyes widened when he saw it. "Dad!" he gasped, running forward before realizing. "It's just a picture," Emily said softly. "But maybe it can help us feel like he's still here." That night they ate dinner with the cutout at the table. It was silly, awkward, and heartbreakingly beautiful all at once. Liam giggled once or twice, his first real laugh in weeks. And for a moment, it almost felt like Mark was there. After dinner, Emily tucked him in and whispered, "You know, your dad would be really proud of you for going to Family Heritage Day." Liam hesitated. "Do you think he'll come if I talk about him?" She smiled through tears. "He already will be there, sweetheart." The day of the event arrived cold and bright. The classroom buzzed with chatter. Parents setting up poster boards, kids showing off family trees. Emily stood at the back, clutching a small folder of photos. Liam sat at his desk, hands fidgeting, eyes darting to the door as if half expecting someone else to walk in. When it was his turn, he stood up slowly. The room went quiet. "My name's Liam Harper," he began softly. "My dad was a firefighter. He saved people." A murmur rippled through the parents. Emily's chest tightened. "He got sick last year," Liam continued, voice trembling slightly. "But he never stopped smiling. Even when he couldn't walk fast anymore, he'd still come to my baseball games. He said heroes don't wear capes. They wear helmets and smell like smoke and coffee." A few parents chuckled gently. Liam took a deep breath. "He told me something before he went to sleep that last night," the boy said. "He said I'd do great things." His voice cracked. "And I think maybe he was right. Because if he's watching, I want him to be proud." The room was silent. Emily bit her lip to keep from crying. Liam reached into his pocket and pulled out the little silver car, holding it up. "He said this would keep me safe, so, that's my family story." The teacher clapped first, then the whole room followed. The applause filled the air, warm and real. Emily watched from the back, hand over her heart. For the first time, the ache inside her eased just a little. That night, as they walked home, the sky was deep purple, the streetlights flickering on one by one. Liam looked up suddenly. "Mom?" "Yes, sweetheart?" "Do you think Dad saw me today?" Emily smiled faintly, squeezing his hand. "He saw everything." Liam looked back at the stars, his voice small but certain. "Then I think he's smiling." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a fleeting moment, Emily could have sworn she heard it too. That familiar hum of a man's voice, carried softly through the evening air, keeping a quiet promise. Always. And for the first time since the candles were blown out, the Harper home didn't feel empty anymore. It felt watched over, not haunted but held. Winter arrived gently that year, wrapping Maplewood Lane in a blanket of white. The first snow came quietly in the night, soft flakes that covered the yard, the porch steps, the tiny red tricycle still left near the fence. When Emily opened the curtains that morning, the world looked untouched, like someone had painted silence across it. She stood there for a long time, watching the flakes fall. It was their first Christmas without Mark. The thought hit like a slow, dull weight in her chest. The holidays had always been his favorite. He'd start decorating too early, play carols off-key on his old guitar, burn cookies in the oven while pretending he'd nailed it. Now the house was still. The string lights remained tangled in a box in the garage, untouched, but Liam didn't forget. A week before Christmas, he came into the kitchen dragging a small cardboard box. "Mom," he said, "can we put the lights up this year?" Emily looked up from the sink. The question caught her off guard. "You want to?" Liam nodded. Dad liked them. If we don't do it, it'll feel like he's not here. She swallowed hard. Okay, she said softly. Let's do it together. That afternoon they bundled up in coats and gloves and went outside. The air smelled like pine and frost. Emily untangled the lights while Liam climbed halfway up the step stool, carefully pressing clips into the gutters. It wasn't neat. Half the bulbs faced sideways. But when they plugged it in that evening, the glow was warm and uneven and perfect. They stood there in the snow, watching the lights flicker to life. Liam whispered, "Do you think Dad can see them?" Emily glanced at the glowing windows, then up at the night sky. "I think he wouldn't miss them for the world." For a moment, the snowflakes drifted between them like falling stars. And just then, she could have sworn she felt a familiar warmth brush past her cheek, like a hand that wasn't there anymore. On Christmas Eve, the house smelled faintly of cinnamon and wood polish. Emily had set the table with the good plates Mark always insisted on using, because every day's worth celebrating. Liam was busy arranging cookies for Santa, 3 chocolate chip and 1 oatmeal raisin, because Dad liked those better. After dinner, Emily brought out an old cardboard box from the closet, one she hadn't opened since last year. Inside were their ornaments, the ones Liam had made in kindergarten. The glass snowman Mark had dropped once and glued back together, and a small wooden star that still bore a faint burn mark from when Mark had tried to carve it with his pocket knife. Liam picked it up, holding it close. "Can we put this one on top?" "Of course," Emily said. "Dad would love that." They stood by the tree together, placing the star at the top. It leaned slightly, imperfect and beautiful. Later, as Liam brushed his teeth, Emily walked to the living room window. Outside, the light shimmered across the snow. In the reflection of the glass, she saw her own face, tired but softer, and behind her the faint outline of the tree glowing gold. For the first time in months, she didn't feel completely alone. That night, when Liam was asleep, Emily found herself drawn to the box of letters she'd started writing to Mark. There were nearly 20 now, each one dated and folded neatly. Some were long, some were only a few sentences. She added another one that night. "Hey love, Merry Christmas. Liam hung the lights today. You'd laugh at how crooked they are. He put your star on the tree. It still leans a little, just like it did last year. I thought I'd be angry at you for leaving, but I can't. I just miss you. It's strange, grief doesn't fade. It just changes shape. I see you everywhere. I hope you see us too." She left the letter under the tree before bed, not knowing why. Maybe part of her still believed he'd find it somehow. Around midnight, a soft sound woke her, a faint clink like the wind chime brushing against the porch. She sat up, listening. The heater had gone quiet. The snow outside glowed faintly under the streetlight. Then she saw it, through the window, the faint flicker of the porch light blinking steadily, rhythmically. Once, twice, 3 times. Then it paused, and blinked again, her breath caught. Mark used to do that. Flick the porch light twice whenever he came home late from a night shift, so she'd know it was him. 2 blinks for love, he'd say, laughing. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Mark?" The light flickered once more, and slow and steady, and then stopped. The house went still again. Emily pressed her palm against the cold glass and closed her eyes. The warmth that filled her chest wasn't fear. It was peace. The next morning, snow blanketed the neighborhood like a storybook. Liam ran downstairs and gasped, "Mom, look!" Beneath the tree next to his gifts lay an envelope. Emily frowned, confused. That wasn't there last night. Liam picked it up and read the front. It was written in a shaky hand for Liam. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and a small silver firefighter's badge. The note read, "Hey, champ, I told you I'd always be with you. Every time you see the lights on the house, that's me saying goodnight. You keep being brave, okay? Help your mom. Keep your promise to be kind no matter what, love, Dad." Emily stared at the paper, her hands trembling. The handwriting, it was Mark's. She'd recognize it anywhere. "Mom?" Liam whispered. "How did he send this?" Emily swallowed, tears streaming down her face. Maybe love doesn't need mailboxes. Liam smiled through his tears, clutching the badge. "I think he saw the lights." She nodded, wrapping her arms around him. "I think he did too." That evening they walked outside again, bundled in scarves and gloves. The light still glowed against the snow, steady and bright. Liam held the badge to his chest. The sky above was painted in purple dusk, the first star twinkling faintly on the horizon. Liam whispered, "Good night, Dad." And somewhere, in the soft shimmer of the lights, the porch bulb blinked twice, once, twice, just like it used to. Emily gasped, then smiled through her tears. For the first time since the birthday, she wasn't afraid of the silence anymore. Because in the hush between the snow and the stars, she finally understood. Love wasn't meant to be heard. It was meant to be felt, and theirs was still glowing. The new year crept in quietly. There were no fireworks this time, just the hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the wall clock, and the wind brushing snow against the windows. Emily and Liam watched the countdown on TV, sitting close under a blanket. When the clock struck midnight, Emily whispered, "Happy New Year, sweetheart," and kissed her son's hair. Liam looked at the photo on the mantel, the one from his birthday, with his dad's smile frozen forever in mid-light. "Happy New Year, Dad," he murmured. That became their new ritual. Every milestone, every small celebration began with including him somehow. It wasn't about pretending he was still alive. It was about remembering that love doesn't vanish. It just changes form. By spring, the snow began to melt. The grass returned. The air smelled like rain and earth, and Liam's laughter started to sound more like itself again. He joined Little League Baseball that season. Mark had been the one who'd signed him up the first time before the diagnosis. Back then, Mark had promised to teach him how to throw a curveball once chemo's over. Now Emily sat in the bleachers by herself, clutching a thermos of coffee, as Liam stood at bat. The crowd clapped politely. When he swung and missed, she could see his shoulders slump. Then from somewhere in the stands, the wind rustled through the flags above the field. It made the same low whooshing sound Mark's breath used to make when he shouted encouragements. Liam froze for a second, eyes narrowing toward the breeze, then straightened his stance. He swung again. Crack. The ball soared into the outfield, past the fence. The crowd erupted. Emily jumped to her feet, cheering, tears already spilling. Liam ran around the bases, face glowing. When he reached home plate, he turned toward the bleachers and grinned. "That one was for Dad," he shouted, and for a brief moment, the sunlight broke through the clouds, a bright golden beam landing directly on him. Like a spotlight, that evening as they drove home, Liam hummed softly, the same tune Mark used to whistle. Emily smiled. "Where'd you learn that song?" He shrugged. "I just heard it in my head today." She didn't say anything, just reached over and squeezed his hand. Over the next few months, small signs began appearing, nothing supernatural, just little coincidences that somehow always seemed too perfectly timed. The porch light blinking twice on stormy nights. The smell of Mark's cologne drifting faintly in the hallway. A firefighter's badge charm Liam found buried in the garden soil, right where Mark used to kneel to plant marigolds. Emily didn't talk about them much. She didn't need to. Some things were too sacred for explanations. In May, Liam's school hosted a hero essay contest for Memorial Week. He came home late from school one afternoon, quiet and thoughtful. "What's wrong, honey?" Emily asked. "Nothing," he said at first. But later that night, she found him at his desk, scribbling on loose paper, tongue between his teeth, concentrating hard. When she peeked in, he covered the page quickly. "Can I read it?" she asked. "Not yet," he said, shyly smiling. "You'll see it at school." The day of the assembly, the gym was packed. Parents filled the bleachers, teachers lined the walls, and a banner stretched across the stage. "Everyday heroes among us." Liam was called last. He walked slowly to the microphone, clutching a small piece of paper, his voice trembling at first but growing steadier with each word. "My hero isn't here today, but he's everywhere I go. My dad was a firefighter. He didn't just save people from fires. He saved me from being scared. He told me real heroes don't need capes. They just need hearts that don't give up. I used to think heroes lived forever, but now I know even when they're gone, they still protect you. My dad said he'd always be with me, and sometimes when the porch light blinks twice, I know he's keeping his promise." The room was silent. Even the teachers wiped their eyes. Emily pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the paper he'd given her that morning, the letter from last Christmas, folded carefully and tucked into her purse. When Liam stepped down, the principal knelt beside him and whispered, "Your dad would be so proud." Liam smiled. "I know. He told me. That night after the ceremony, Emily tucked Liam into bed. He was already half asleep, the essay trophy on his nightstand beside the little silver car and the badge. She whispered, "Good night, sweetheart." His eyes fluttered. "Good night, Mom." "Good night, Dad." The wind chimes outside swayed gently, filling the room with a familiar melody. Emily stood there for a long time, watching her son breathe. Then she turned toward the window and saw just for a heartbeat the faint reflection of a man standing behind her, smiling. He looked peaceful, proud, fading softly with the wind. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. "Good night, Mark," she whispered. Later that week, Emily opened her laptop again and began typing her final letter in the document she'd kept for nearly a year. "Dear Mark, I think we're okay now." Liam laughs again. "The house doesn't feel as heavy. Sometimes I still talk to you in my head, and maybe that's crazy, but it helps. You taught us how to live with courage, not because life is easy, but because love makes it bearable. The truth is you never really left, did you? You're in the porch light, in the wind, in the way Liam runs with his head tilted just like you did. I see you every day in small ways that no one else would notice. Thank you for keeping your promise always." She saved the document, closed the laptop, and walked to the window. The sun was setting, golden light spilling across the quiet yard, touching the porch, the swing. The spot where Mark used to sit reading the newspaper. The light blinked twice. Emily smiled. Love, she realized, wasn't something that ended when a heartbeat stopped. It was something that kept moving, through memories, through laughter, through the way a child carries the best parts of his father into the world. And as the last of the day faded into evening, the Harper home stood glowing softly under the porch light, a house once shadowed by loss, now warmed by the gentle, eternal hum of love that had never really gone anywhere at all. Summer returned with the scent of fresh-cut grass and the sound of sprinklers ticking in the evening air. A full year had passed since the birthday photo, the one that would forever mark before and after in the Harper family's story. Yet somehow time had folded in on itself. The grief had softened its sharp edges, and life had begun quietly, to grow again in the empty spaces Mark left behind. Emily stood on the porch one warm July morning, coffee in hand, watching Liam chase fireflies across the yard. His laughter carried through the air, pure and bright. There was something about the way he ran, the tilt of his head, the lightness in his step, that reminded her of Mark every single time. She smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile she used to wear, not wide or unshaken, but one that had learned how to exist alongside the ache. She whispered to herself, "You'd be proud, love," and she meant it. That summer, Liam turned 9. Emily had promised herself she wouldn't make the day sad, that it wouldn't be about who wasn't there, but about who still was. Yet, as the morning sun poured through the kitchen window, she couldn't help glancing at the empty chair at the table, the one that had belonged to Mark. Still, she baked the cake, vanilla this time, with chocolate chips because it was Liam's new favorite. She even found the old box of candles in the back of a drawer, 8 used ones and 1 new one. When she placed them on the cake, she paused. 9 candles, 9 years. One promise kept. Liam bounded into the kitchen, barefoot and bright-eyed. "Can we invite some friends, Mom?" "Of course," she said, kissing his forehead. "It's your day." Within an hour, the house was filled with the sound of sneakers and laughter again. It felt like last year. Balloons on the fridge, paper hats on the kids, chaos everywhere. Emily stayed in the kitchen, cutting fruit, letting the noise fill the silence that used to echo. But something felt different this time, lighter, warmer. When she brought out the cake, the children started singing, their small voices filling the room with joy. Liam grinned, his cheeks glowing. He leaned forward, staring at the flickering candles, and for just a moment, as the flame light danced across his face, Emily saw both of them there, father and son, 2 smiles, 1 memory. "Make a wish," she said softly, and her voice didn't tremble this time. Liam closed his eyes. This time he didn't wish for his dad to come back. He whispered instead, "Thank you, God, for letting me keep him." Then he blew out the candles, and the smoke rose in a twisting curl toward the ceiling, like a soft message sent upward into unseen air. That evening, after the party ended and the kids went home, Emily and Liam sat outside on the porch steps, eating leftover cake with their fingers. Fireflies blinked lazily in the grass. "Mom," Liam said after a while. "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Dad remembers me?" Emily's breath caught, but she smiled. "Oh, honey, he could never forget you. You're the best part of him." Liam looked down at the small silver firefighter's badge he still carried everywhere, running his thumb over the engraved number, Mark's badge number. "Sometimes when I'm scared I talk to him," he admitted softly. "Not out loud, but in here." He tapped his chest. "And then I don't feel scared anymore." Emily wrapped her arm around him. "That's because he hears you." He looked up at her, eyes wide with something almost like wonder. "Even now?" She nodded. "Especially now." As summer days rolled by, life found rhythm again. Emily returned to work at the local library, a place filled with quiet and stories, a space that suited her healing. Liam spent his afternoons helping her shelve books, always racing her down the aisles. One afternoon, as they were closing, Liam found a children's book on a low shelf titled The Firefighter Who Couldn't Be Seen. He opened it curiously. Inside were colorful pages about a little boy who could feel his father's love in every light, in every breeze, in every heartbeat. He looked up. "Mom, look. It's like us." Emily took the book, stunned. She flipped to the last page, and there, written in neat cursive, was a dedication. "For all the families who know that love doesn't end, it just changes where it lives." Her throat tightened. "Yeah," she whispered. "It's exactly like us." They checked it out that evening. And when they read it together before bed, Emily realized that stories, even the ones full of loss, could end in peace. The year passed slowly, like turning pages in a thick, familiar book. On the anniversary of Mark's passing, Emily and Liam visited the cemetery for the first time since the funeral. The morning was still, the grass damp with dew. They brought 3 things: the photo from the birthday, the firefighter's badge, and a single vanilla cupcake with 1 candle. Liam set the cupcake on the headstone and lit the candle carefully, shielding it from the wind. He whispered, "Happy birthday. Dad, I brought you your favorite." The flame flickered, bent once, then steadied. Emily stood behind him, silent. The sun broke through the clouds just then, a beam of golden light resting gently over the stone, catching the silver of the badge, making it shimmer. Neither of them spoke, but both of them knew it wasn't goodbye. It never had been. It was just a different kind of togetherness. Later that evening, as they drove home, the sky burned orange with sunset. Liam leaned his head against the car window and said quietly, "Mom, you know what I think?" "What, baby?" "I think when we die, we don't really go away. We just become part of everyone we love. Like, Dad's part of me now. And you." Emily's eyes filled. "I think you're absolutely right." That night she tucked Liam into bed, kissed his forehead and turned off the light. The room glowed softly with the light from the hallway, catching the photo frames on his dresser, the birthday picture, the Christmas lights, the baseball trophy. She lingered by the door, whispering, "Good night, my love," Liam mumbled sleepily. "Good night, Mom. Good night, Dad." Outside, the porch light blinked twice, slow, gentle, familiar. Emily smiled through her tears. "Always," she whispered back. Years later, long after the porch swing had rusted and the tree in the yard had grown tall enough to brush the roof, neighbors still spoke of the Harper house. How it always seemed warm, how the light never burned out. Inside, the framed photo from that last birthday remained on the mantel. The boy, the cake, the father's tired but peaceful smile, and if you looked closely, really closely, you could almost see it. The faint shimmer of something between the candlelight and the boy's face, a moment that refused to fade, a love that outlasted every ending, a promise kept before the photo was taken. They didn't know it would be their last one together. But after, it became proof that some goodbyes are not the end. They are the beginning of forever.